It seems like the attention grabber is, everyone's fixated on the centerpiece here. So this is like your carriage. So here we have a litter on a 4-point bridle. These tend to torque. So I wanted a swivel attachment point that I can do a rapid quick connect here, so keep everything in line. The Aztec already has a swiveling ring, so I don't need the extra swivel. Going through the pre-rig plate to more swivels on the ASAPs on our Reeving lines. These are taking place of the traditional pressings. They're ASAP locks, so depending on if you want to do an English or sorry, if you want to do like a Norwegian Reeve, you can lock one side and then you don't have to worry about line management when they drop you down or lower you down, not drop you down. So you can kind of see our English Reeve a little bit better with our rigging plate here. Ideally, we would never want to put more load on any Highline system than we have to. But if we did have to have a rescuer, just like your standard connections, main and a backup. So this is the main adjustable line for the rescuer on the set of 4s. And we can clip directly in below here. And then the backup line is a dynamic lanyard. It's fixed length, so you can just clip in here any point that will accommodate that on the Reeving part. Once we collapse this and we're ready to come back up, the rescuer can temporarily disconnect, so it's only on one point of contact, so long as it's just temporary, and then reconnect up into the carriage to replace that back up. This will stay the same because it's going to be weighted on this. So moving on up, everything is pre-rigged as much as possible. So I wanted to eliminate the possibility that anybody can just start taking this stuff apart, because when we try to rig it again, there's a lot of pieces to it, and I wanted to make it just very clean. And that's what this is. So if we look it down, or I can just angle this out, I lashed together 2 Reeves for a default dual track in a horizontal configuration. Not to say we can't do a vertical configuration with the carabiner and pulley up here to make dual track vertical, but our default is going to be a horizontal dual track. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 rings all interconnected into the ring to make it like one big assembly. A Kootenay Highline, horizontal English Reeving Kootenay Highline. Dual track, single carriage. The old prusik bypasses, I think the only video I saw was Pat Rhodes, where he had the Yates shorties that deployed at like 2 kilonewtons. These things are like 3.5 where they deploy. Yeah, I can get away with having a knot now, because this is gonna stretch and tear and elongate. So between 2 ASAP SORBER 20s, that's a total of 8 feet max total, where this can actually stretch should the anchors or the track lines themselves fail. This will, 1, dissipate the energy, it'll stretch, it'll drop the catenary angle. This catenary angle will start to collapse and the forces will inherently drop. You could argue that you'd want to bypass maybe a directional figure 8 or a butterfly or a bow line, and then bypass with a tail and jump to like here. I just didn't see the need for that, because I didn't want to limit the full capacity for this to stretch and tear. Even stretched to their limit, they have a breaking strength of 22 kilonewtons, ANSI standard, but they will deploy and rip at forces much lower than that. So between 650 to 780 pounds, and that's fine, that's what we want. Our high tension's here. If this fails, this absorbs it, and that's our backup. So we want a lot of stretch and potential to absorb impact forces. These are called control lines, near and far side control lines, but they're also belay lines in addition to that. So they have to act as belays for a failing track line. The English Reeve line, it's just a regular working line that goes up and down on a 2-to-1 at a minimum, and then you compound whatever else you have onto that. Let's start at the far side. 2 yellows, dual track, horizontal configuration. Blue is control or belay, because they're also a belay, they're dual purpose. And then red is Reeve, red for Reeve. We have festoons. You want these festoons spaced out, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 30 feet, depending on conditions. And these festoons keep our belay line or control line for the track lines relatively close on like a long span. It keeps that sag, that secondary sag to a minimum, so that if there was a failure, there would be less drop. You can just girth hitch festoons. I just did a 3-aught prusik because I wanted to shorten the total length, because everything's kind of low profile here. Where we exit our system out over into the span, into the abyss, what that looks like, it just depends. Here we have an artificial high directional, but if we had a big freaking tree or a building, we could just lash this thing up to the building and call it good. This is a standard A-frame, and we guide it. So we basically took 4 long prusiks. Instead of using guy lines like with separate anchors, we just piggybacked off of the existing track lines and guide the A-frame onto the track line. I think I taught a class once where they said, well, the force on the track line is being transferred into the prusik onto your frame. It's like, no, it's not. The force is continuing through the prusik. This is just holding the tension of the fore and aft motion of your high directional. So our resultant's kind of in line. Our frame is actually kind of canted back away from the edge just a little bit because our resultant's actually kind of going a little bit forward. That's fine. We want to match those catenary angles up as much as we can. So we want the exit point of our control line, relay line, we want that to be as close in height to our track lines. Because again, if our track lines fail and this is not high with that track line, we will fall until that control line engages. And we don't want that free fall distance. We want to keep everything to a minimum. So when we rig this up, we want everything to kind of be nice and compact and close together, especially our control line to our track line, distance-wise. Also, I don't want to put this blue control line onto the Beckett and swap it for the red, because that's a critical point here where, let's say, I don't know, maybe the pen's not going to fail, but I don't know, maybe the pulley fails or whatever, but this is attached to that track line system, and if the track line fails, maybe it fails here, then so does our control line, and we don't want that. Reeving line, not a big deal. So we can use the Beckett to attach the reeving line from the track line. The control line I want separate, and I want it to be as high as possible in line with that track line. So now you can kind of see how everything's in line, everything is clean and nice and organized. And I took advantage of using like truss hooks if I wanted to get this up close to this double sheet pulley on the track line. A 300-foot line on yellow, so the bite is actually on the near side. This is the far side. And high strength tie-offs to Kootenays. We pinned them so that they don't rotate. There's basically like little trees. So your classic high strength tie-off into the knot. We just terminally tied off that reeving line to the anchor plate just because it's convenient for us. Our control line on the far side, here I just deemed that a bomb-proof anchor. We just adjusted where I wanted that change of direction to be, like a dynamic directional with an Aztec. I pinned the orange on the Aztec, so that ensures 36 kilonewton braking strength, because if I pin the blue, I only have 3 strands supporting this as opposed to 4 when I pin the orange. And I direct my far side control line out. Let's take a look out here. So far side control line is going to be a mirror image of the near side control line. I can put mechanical advantage in here as much as I want, but in reality I shouldn't have to, because if I'm doing a horizontal high line, it should be very easy to pull the carriage left and right, back and forth with very little mechanical advantage, if any. But I don't want the near and far side to fight each other. So if the near side is pulling in on their side, I have to go wide open on the Maestro and let it out. It's not a lower, it's just a full let out, because I don't want them to fight the lower. We've done this before where they had to build like 5-to-1 mechanical advantage and put 3 people on it and haul on it really hard, and they were getting nowhere because the people on the far side were treating it as a lower when they should just let it go. The flip side to letting it go is, well, you defeat the auto locking mechanism of this belay device now, like the blue is belaying, right? So we need to put an ASAP on the Beckett. And so if something should fail, the track line should fail, I'm still going wide open while they're pulling that package back to the near side, and if it fails, the ASAP on this side will catch it. That compensates for human error. So the rigging on the near side should be a mirror image of this. So let's go to the near side. So on a sideways A-frame, these are great because they can accommodate a swinging resultant. If you look at how we angled this out, so about 10 to 15 degrees to make room for these lines to get through, and that's pretty nice. Plus it also makes hobbling and lashing and guying our system a little bit easier, because now I just guy the feet to prevent them from kicking out that way by tying them back this way, and the head, to keep the head from tipping over this way, I guy it back that way. Then when it gets loaded on tension track lines, everything is kind of balanced in equilibrium. And then this strap here was when it was unloaded and unweighted, I just tied it down just to keep this thing from flopping back on the other side when our track lines weren't in. I want these lines to be very close together between the track and the control lines, height-wise, just like I stated before. And I use truss hooks and try to get creative with the head to figure out the best way to get that. But it's a mirror image on the Reeving system. And then let's jump. It goes through a directional on our control line here, and then we follow it back out, and it's a mirror image of the far side control line so that we can adequately belay while at the same time we can do work, so we can pull in or let out on that package as it goes across the span. Rescue senders in place of our tandem truss hooks. I want to keep these together in case one part fails, I don't lose another part. This is a closed loop 2-to-1 system. And so if you look down, let's follow it all the way down here. high strength tie off set all the way up to a 2-to-1 here, down through a differential. I call it a class 4 pulley. Some people call it class 3. I call it class 4. Differential pulley. The load cell is reading half the force in the entire system, or the tension in a single line. So if we have one of these, no more guesswork about the rule of 18 or rule of 12 or the 10% rule. We don't care. You have the load cell, just don't go above 900 or go above 900. But 900 pounds on the readout is going to be your 10-to-1 safety factor. So through differential, the second 2-to-1, all the way back down, tied off, terminal end. So now what we do when we haul on the Aztec, the tension in our system, this is in a 5-to-1 configuration on the Aztec, and I pen the orange to maximize the strength of this. So 4 strands gives me 36 kilonewtons braking strength on this Aztec. So when I pull in a 5-to-1 and it splits out here, so it's 5 to this point, and then 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 5, 5, back to 5 on each line. Each line is tension on a 5-to-1 system through the Aztec. Lashing and frapping on the anchors, a technique. So I use round lashing, and then frapping is when we choke everything up and we really get this thing seized tight. The terminal ends of our track lines. Some people will tie this off permanently to the anchor. I don't want to do that because, well, for one, I want a little bit of sag, but at the same time, this gives me room to let more out if I need to let more out, or take all this slack, and I can adjust tension and detention through the IDs and the Aztec sequentially if I need to. This gives me a lot more flexibility and adjustability. These are also rated belay devices. They will also allow for slippage in addition. So if I have the gear and ID is perfect for this application, I don't want to permanently tie this off to the anchor. I'd rather put it through something that has a cam and I can adjust. Okay, so Highlines in rescue should be built based off of Kootenay principles as much as possible within reason. Sometimes you kind of break those Kootenay rules or principles based on the conditions. So Highlines that we built for rescue, the Kootenay Highlines, how do we categorize these things? These carabiners are just for when I don't have an English reeve. I can just use these carabiners and clip directly into my bridle if I'm not reeving. So Highlines can be based off of angle. They can be horizontal, or they can be angled. And angled has 2 subcategories, sloping or steep. And it depends on like the degree of angle, but it affects like the forces in our system, which I'm not going to cover because it's kind of boring and gets really into the weeds. We have horizontal, sloping, and steep. That's by angle. We also have them categorized by kind of how they function. So we have a simple transport, which is not a reeving system. If this litter was just attached up to the carriage, that would just be a simple transport where it's going out back and forth. So that's simple transport. We have the reeving Highline, and then we have a drooping Highline where we drop the entire track line down and up, and that's suited for like a big span. So simple transport, drooping, and then reeving. And then within the reeving realm, there's 2 subcategories of reeving Highlines. This one's the English reeve, where we drop that bite down on a 2-to-1 and we terminate one end on the far side. The Norwegian will just terminate right here. By angle, by function, and then some subcategories of our Kootenay Highlines is, well, how many track lines do we want? Single track line, dual track lines. This one's a dual track line. There's 2. It's hard to get 3, but you can get 4. So in pairs, it's kind of easier. So you can go as much as you want. Usually, if you're doing 4 to 6 track lines, you're kind of going above a river where you want like this thing to be almost like no sag practically, like a raging river. Also, subcategories is by the carriage type. Even though this has 2 sets of pulleys, it's still a single carriage. It's a single piece. Or you could span these out and do like dual carriages. So like another carriage over here, and then you could split up your bridle. But I like the bridle to have a central point. What's great about this is it also can swivel right there, as you can see. So it makes maneuverability a lot easier. Let's talk about catenary angles. With these artificial high directionals on a horizontal Highline, you'd usually want them out, away, maybe 6 feet. So we'd want our edge kind of, or span where it drops off maybe here, and then we set our high directional out. And this gives us space to bring litters and packages in. It also helps fan our catenary angle out. So on the high directional, it's the inverse of anchor principles. We want a big catenary angle here, because the bigger the catenary angle, the less force on our compression members. So 120 is the critical angle. If I can get this, so this is flattened out on the track line. So there's not a whole lot of force pushing down on this. There is some, but not a whole lot, because this catenary angle from here to here is so great. And we want to maximize that. I mean, once we get to 90 degrees, like it's 150% amplification. And we definitely don't want to be in that realm or that range. So same thing over here with our sideways A-frame. We want to maximize that catenary angle out here. So the bigger the catenary angle, the better. But we want some force driving this frame down into the ground. If you look at where our resultant is right now, so our resultant is kind of coming right there, perfect. And that's what we want. Okay, let's talk about the Kootenay principles. So right now it's at mid-span, it's unloaded, it's at 200 pounds. Usually it's like 150 is kind of where you want, and then when it gets loaded, then you have to adjust and make sure that you tension appropriately. And you don't want to exceed this thing they call the 10-to-1 safety factor, and where that comes from. Whole big long story about where that comes from, and a whole big long story about like how to tension this if you don't have that load cell right there. The rule of 18s or the rule of 12s, and it gets kind of muddied, but all that was created, the rule of 18s and the rule of 12s was created specifically for tensioning highlines. And it's based off of like the grip strength of a single hauler. They did the tests. It was somewhere like Arnold Larson, Rigging for Rescue, whoever did the tests, and it was deemed that about 50 to 60 pounds is how much one hauler could continuously haul sustained based on grip strength. And so to make it nice and even, they said 50 pounds. So if 50 pounds is what one person could pull, and let's relate it to our 10-to-1 safety factor and say, if granted these are 11 mil ropes, but technology now has come a long way, and these 11 mils are actually 9,000 pound breaking strength or 40 kilonewtons. In the past, only ½ inch was that strong, but now we have ropes that are thinner and stronger. So these are 9,000 pounds of 40 kilonewton breaking strength, and when you do a 10-to-1 safety factor on that, that's 4 kilonewtons or 900 pounds is your 10-to-1 safety factor. How many hands or 50-pound people pulling will go into 900? And the answer is 18, hence the rule of 18 to maintain that 10-to-1 safety factor. I had some people in classes that threw that out at me while I was teaching mechanical advantage, and it was an indicator that somebody somewhere along down the lines, it got lost in translation. So putting more people on a mechanical advantage system does not increase your mechanical advantage. It just decreases the amount of force that each person has to pull. And the rule of 18s it's not a guide, or rule of 12s or 18s, whatever. That's not a guide to figure out how much mechanical advantage you need. That was an estimation to prevent over tensioning your track line in a highline system. So that's where that comes from.